Defensive coordinator Matt Burke's press conferences are underrated, in my opinion. And I understand why people aren't as interested in them as Bobby Slowick's because D'Amico is the defensive play caller. At least he was last year. We'll find out about this year. But Matt is not as close to the vest as D'Amico is, I think. And he kind of doles out a few little nuggets here or there, especially when it came to one of the questions he was asked. I'm going to play you my favorite clips from his press conference today about Jalen Petrie. Sarge asked him a question that elicited a good question.
Matt, what have you seen these first couple of days from Jalen Petrie? And it looks like you all are putting him in some positions that he may be familiar with, like from his college playing days.
That's a good question. Yeah, we're moving all those guys around. Again, I think we've said this from when we got here. The more versatile you can be, the better it helps us, from disguises, from getting the right people on the field, from different packages. So I would just say this, there's a lot of guys we're trying to cross-train. We're trying to put guys in positions and see what's the best place for them to be successful for themselves and for this team and to make plays.
Yes, very good question, because Jalen Petrie was playing in the slot in these first few days. It seems like he's been down near the line of scrimmage a good chunk, and we saw at times when he struggled being a deep safety last year. With Jalen, like, there's something there, obviously. And I think probably this offseason, they spent a lot of time trying to figure out exactly what his skill set is best suited for. I don't think they can use him exactly like they did at Baylor, because he's not that same caliber of athlete that can be out covering slots all the time. And I think with Cade Stover potentially in being a deep safety, a center field safety, it opens up all kinds of cover three opportunities and everything. So, I mean, there's times with Jalen who does not lack for intelligence at all. He's got a very good football IQ, but I think his temperament it's almost like trying to train a tiger to be a house cat. And there's certain elements of being a safety, no matter how ferocious a deep safety you are, where you got to be a house cat sometimes. House cats are kind of bastards, though, too. You have to be like a well-trained dog at times, and you gotta restrain yourself from coming up and biting the mailman. And Jalen can't help but bite the mailman. And so I think that this year we might see him used a little bit more flexibly. Speaking of young defensive backs, the next question was about how Kamari Lassiter, the rookie cornerback, has been doing in coverage.
Yeah, he's been great. Very competitive. Always around the ball. Like, even when he's maybe giving up a completion, he's right there. There's a hand in the pocket. So just has really taken to the techniques we're trying to play, and has had a really good spring, and the camp started the same way. So really excited for him to keep developing where he is.
So there's been a lot of discussion about Kamari Lassiter the last couple days, and we're 3 days into training camp. No pads yet. I don't think the pads come on until Tuesday. And he's been playing with the ones a lot. Matt touches on that a little bit later. But I think the thing that stands out is that, when a rookie gets thrown in against the Tank Dells of the world, the Stephon Diggs and what have you, there's going to be some moments where he doesn't look all that hot. That's no big deal. But he is also playing alongside a couple of other cornerbacks who have been playing over on the right side also, with Jeff Okudah and CJ Henderson, who are freakishly gifted athletes, which isn't the same necessarily as being a freakishly good cornerback. Those guys have both been on two teams apiece. So while I have seen Lassiter times get beat, I've also seen evidence, like today, I saw him running step for step with Tank Dell on a route. I think there's been other moments where a guy like Kamari Lassiter, who when he was in college, played like he had a really good feel for recognizing patterns, understanding his responsibilities, coming up and playing the run, all those things that, frankly, a good zone cornerback is going to be good at. Think about Rondé Barber. Rondé Barber was not as athletic as a lot of other elite cornerbacks, but in his system, it has some similarities. I'm not going to say it's the same as a Tampa 2, but it has some similarities to what they're probably going to be asking Kamari Lassiter to do. It's going to take Kamari a little bit of time to recognize what NFL route running looks like. And I think him running with the ones a lot has a little bit of a trial by fire element to it. I think just like if you play the fifth level of a video game, you go back down to the fourth level and all of a sudden you can see things a lot more clearly. So I think they put him in there, let him see the best of the best and understand the speed and start to pick up on it. And then as we work along, continue on the coverage. So I've seen the flashes of speed that's perfectly fine. And then I've seen it other times he looks like a rookie, but I'm nowhere near some kind of stage where I'm worried about him yet. There will be time for that. I've got so many things I can worry about. I've got a whole roster full of potential worries on a whiteboard in my bedroom. I make my wife look at it every night so she understands my stress. Next question that I apologize I haven't addressed earlier is, where the hell is Christian Harris? Christian Harris has not been out there. Nobody's making a big deal out of it, but Christian Harris is not out there.
Expect him back when he's ready to play ball for us. I mean, again, this, a lot of guys you'll see as you guys are here throughout, we're just different sort of plans to get ready. I mean, again, our goal is game one, week one, and being healthy and stuff. So each guy's kind of on an individualized plan. So he'll be ready to go when it's time.
So we have zero clue why Christian Harris isn't out there. The people I asked from the Texans didn't give me any details, but they did not look at all like they think it's a big deal. And there's people that usually you can, I analyze the body language, and he was giving interviews up until just right before camp where everything seemed to be just fine. I do think whatever it is, whether it's a personal issue or a lingering issue, injury or something like that, I have no idea. But one of the benefits of having this extra week of training camp because of the Hall of Fame game is that you can kind of roll guys out slowly. I mean, they are going to take their sweet ass time with Laramie Tunsil. We've already started to see a lot of veteran rest days. I mean, half their defensive ends are 30 years old or older, which I love. So no substantial news is good news until further notice. We'll keep it at that for at least a few more days, and then we're going to start digging. Usually people try to be respectful about mysterious absences at this time of year because you just never know what's going on in a guy's life. Next question was simply, how much of an asset has linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair been? Huge.
I mean, I think it goes hand in hand. I mean, because he has such a comfort level with the scheme and the system, it lets him sort of be freer to be that leader and take on those roles and to be able to communicate that with the guys. Obviously in the linebacker room, very much so, but even with the whole defense. And, all of us having a history now with a year in together and stuff, and then adding guys like that bring that second layer. And it's just been cool, like commanding the huddle and really, honestly, I'd say this, like team-wide, it's really fun to watch the level of communication, even across the ball. Diggs will come over and talk to the DBs, like O-line, D-line, getting some extra work in sometimes after. It feels like a lot of the guys we brought in are kind of have that natural leadership, and just the communication just across all levels has been really cool to watch.
Okay, so two things that are essential to have a really good football team for a long time. I would say trust and communication. And those two things are completely and totally intertwined. And and the reason it's hard in the NFL is because there's just so much testosterone. And there's just so much drive and competitiveness and everything else. And if you know anybody in your life that has testosterone running through their veins, we're not always the best at communicating, right? Especially if we tend to be the kind of guys that also like to go out and bash things. So for a football team, like that's where the benefit of having D'Amico, whether he's an offensive minded or defensive minded head coach, a head coach that can foster good communication. And when there are issues, when there's things that need to be addressed, you gotta talk about it before you can fix it. And that's where it helps having a calm, steady guy at the helm in D'Amico Ryans. He's like an androgenized Brene Brown. That's what he is. That's what everybody calls him, androgenized Brene Brown. So the next question, I believe, was asked by Will Kunkel. I'm going to leave Will's question in because I want you to watch Matt Burke scoff at Will Anderson being as tough on himself as he is.
Will said he added about 20 pounds in the offseason, said he was tossed around against the Ravens. Is that something you guys talked about? Was it a team plan? Was this his plan? You liked it?
I mean, we want... I don't know if it was a specific, like, you have to put on 20 pounds plan. I think... Will's very hard on himself, so we never want guys to get like too big where they can't be good at what they're at. You know what I mean? Will's 400 pounds, that doesn't help him. So like, as long as he can still be explosive and move the way we ask him to move, and then the heavier you are, obviously that creates more power and more impact. So, I think he's done a really good job of just staying lean, staying his lower. He's always been such a powerful lower half guy. I think he's seeing some development in his upper body that's maybe going to help put that strength on for him a little bit. So he's had a good start to camp. It's showing. Like, again, he's still moving the way we want him to move and being able to carry the extra weight. Sometimes guys put on weight and then they stop maybe being as fast or explosive. So for him to be able to carry that extra weight and still be powerful and explosive, that's hopefully going to pay dividends in the season.
Yeah, and look, Will was a combo linebacker / defensive end in college. He was off the ball at times. He was in coverage. And just by the demands of what he had to do, it wouldn't have really benefited him to be 265. Now that all he is a hand in the dirt defensive end, it makes a lot of sense that he gained some weight. And I've always felt that about him, that he had some upper body development still to be had. So like Matt said, you just gotta watch, you gotta monitor, you be sure a guy's not muscle bound. Remember back in the day, they didn't want athletes to lift weights because they'd be muscle bound. It does happen. But the one guy that I think of is Von Miller, because Von Miller came in and was very good right off the bat his rookie year. But after spending some time with J.J. Watt, actually, with other influences, Von bulked up one year, and that was when he really broke through. And Von's a different type of athlete than Will Anderson. I'll always go to Nick Bosa. I think Nick Bosa, who is 6'4", 265, that's where Will is right now. I think athletically, in terms of being a combination of power and speed, it makes a lot of sense. So I don't anticipate any issues. Micah Parsons last year gained weight, worked out really well for him till the playoffs, I suppose. But one thing about the gaining weight, though, too, is that you got to be committed to lifting heavy during the season. You got to work out with intensity during the season, because otherwise you just wither away. You end up looking like Tony Mandarich after they started testing for steroids. Next, he was asked about, with all these changes, with the free agents coming in, et cetera, do they feel like they're better suited to do what they really want to do on defense?
I just feel like we've added a lot of depth. I feel like across the board, there's been a lot of depth added to, you look at, again, what's guys that are running our second group, our third group right now. I mean, there's a lot of depth across the board there. So I think that's where we've really hopefully, and then the competition raises and kind of pushes everybody up. So that's kind of what we try to do this offseason.
I cut that answer down just to the depth part, because that's where I've gotten genuinely excited out there at camp, is when I watch different position groups and watch some of the battles that are going on. This is as many viable NFL players vying for backup spots as I think we've seen in a long time. The defensive tackle position alone, which I know a lot of you are concerned about. For one, start off that Mario Edwards and Danico Autry can play defensive tackle, not full-time, but they're going to be down there a lot. But you go with Tim Settle, Foley Fatukasi, Kurt Heinisch, Khalil Davis, and then the rookie Marcus Harris, who has flashed a lot of athleticism. And he's not a big guy in terms of body weight, but he is thick. He's built really well. And then McTelvin Agim, who I think might have just been a bad scheme fit in Denver, because I've seen some flashes out of him. And Nick Caserio brought him up unprompted when we had him in studio for an hour over on Sports Radio 610, here at Sports Radio 610, but over in that studio back there. And I do think, and honestly, I think people probably get tired of hearing this because everybody talks about it, but the competition matters. Like, creating this atmosphere where there's competition all the time, when you've got guys who are all those guys I mentioned, I think if they get cut, they're going to be on another roster in the NFL. I think you do get the absolute best version out of those guys. And in this scheme too, there's something to be said for, like, man, just some schemes are simply better fits for some guys than others. Like, personally, I was okay when I was in Jacksonville. I came here, and in Dom Capers' true defense, because he was actually my coordinator in Jacksonville, but because of our personnel, he wasn't able to really run his scheme. So when I came and played for Vic Fangio and Dom Capers in their true version of the 3-4 defense, it just amplified my level of play. It was just completely different. And it was because it was a better scheme fit for me in the right position. I think about that with Jalen Petrie a lot, honestly. Like, as a 4-3 defensive tackle, I was like, as a nose tackle in Dom Capers' 3-4 defense, not just any 3-4, but Dom Capers specifically, it just like unlocked a different level of play for me. So I always keep that in mind with guys, that, man, sometimes it's just a matter of finding the right fit, the right positions. Think of the leap that Christian Harris took last year with D'Amico Ryans as his coach in that system. And Jalen Petrie, it can happen for him too. It just doesn't necessarily always happen at once. Did we misjudge exactly how we use Jalen Petrie, or is it just a simple matter that because of all the injuries in the secondary that Jalen had to play that way? I don't know, but that's why we practice and then play football games. I'm Seth Payne, played for the Texans a long time ago, as you might have deduced from my previous anecdote. Now I do radio on Sports Radio 610. I have this YouTube channel, and I will be out there all next week at training camp. Please like, subscribe, share on your various social media platforms. Awesome.